The second Nightmare arc. Despite being one of the most overlooked arcs in Shadow Slave, being overshadowed by arcs like the Antarctica and Third Nightmare arc, it still has some of my favorite moments and characters in the series. And of those characters, one of them stood out the most to me. And not just because of how incredibly well his character is written, with his incredible personality and chemistry with Sunny, but because it just doesn't make any sense. His existence just doesn't make any sense. Where is he in the real world? What the hell is going on? I feel like this character is way too overlooked for how important he is. And after rereading some sections of the second Nightmare, I believe I am very close to the truth of what the Nightmare spell is, and how the Noctis in the real world might be one of the most important and powerful characters in the series. And trust me, there really is a lot of evidence to support this than you might think. So let's dive straight into it. Noctis was such a goated character, man. The way he treated Sunny as a friend despite his hideous appearance was really something. And so I wondered, in the real world, where the hell is Noctis? We know he must be alive, since the knives are the only way to kill immortals. And since Sunny took the obsidian knife from the real world, he has to be somewhere. But where? And then I remembered what Noctis said right at the beginning after meeting Sunny. Before we met, you see, I was prepared to do something rather drastic. So if anyone can find a way to end our lives without the knives, it would be Weaver. We know that in the real world, Hope obviously got freed, and that is without the help of the knives, because Sylvain and Noctis were still alive, and because Sunny didn't get a glorious assessment from the spell. And we know for sure he went to Weaver, but what we also know is that Noctis became one of the High Nightmare Priests, or at least learned the sorcery of Weaver, because of that deal. Want evidence? There is a memory in the third Nightmare made by someone that used the sorcery of Weaver with an enchantment which at first glance doesn't make you think anything further of it. It's called Why Did It Have to Be Black? And what was one of Noctis's lines? But alas, black doesn't suit me at all. I won't be caught dead wearing black. Or alive, really. And now, this seemingly useless and out of place enchantment becomes one of the most important pieces to solving this puzzle. If you still doubt that he was a Nightmare Priest, tell me, why else would Guilty 3 make the mantle have such a random enchantment? Do you really think a writer like him, who loves to foreshadow things, makes coincidences? I don't. So now that we have established who he is, where is an important figure such as him today? Well, what if I told you he was right under our noses this whole time? In fact, he had become the Nightmare spell. Now before you write your doubts, hear me out. I have proof. We know that despite how omniscient the spell is currently, it has personality. We see the spell mock Nephis in her second Nightmare and praise Sunny in his first. The spell sounded excited when Sunny was about to consume the drop of Ichor and obtain Weaver's lineage, as if it was excited to see Weaver's mission of his lineage being found finally completing, tempting him to consume it. But of course, I wouldn't be making such a ridiculous claim if that was all the evidence I had. You see, the spell tells the person completing a nightmare to wake up every time they do. And upon Sunny having completed his first nightmare, it said, "Wake up, lost from light." But then, in the second nightmare, where Noctis found himself being friends with Sunless, going through a platitude of adventures with him, and even having him change his mind on going to Weaver, the spell said, "Wake up, Sunless." Now, why didn't it call him lost from light like before? It was because it saw himself go down a different path, and maybe the spell even got attached to Sunny, thus calling him Sunless instead of lost from light, because he then saw Sunny in an entirely different light. The deal Noctis made with Weaver is to transfer his immortal soul into the Nightmare spell. And if you still aren't convinced, then answer me this. why was it suddenly sentimental instead of proud in the second nightmare? I mean, realistically, there would be no other reason for an omniscient, all-knowing entity like the spell to feel surprised or feel anything at Sunny freeing Hope or changing Noctis' life. Except if the spell was Noctis. It makes sense, because Noctis' aspect would allow him to transfer his soul, and even if he didn't do it with his aspect, with the sorcery of Weaver, he could probably weave his soul into the spell. If we consider he was trained by a Weaver himself. Where else would Noctis be? He can't be dead, he has no physical body, and he sure as hell wouldn't just rot away hiding in some remote location knowing his personality. What else would Noctis have of value to Weaver for him to free Hope except his immortal soul that Weaver could use in the creation of the nightmare spell? Take a look at Noctis' aspect. He is just the perfect core of the spell because he is immortal, and would make it last for all of eternity as Weaver wants. As big as his goals are, and considering he was prepared to die, I don't see it far-fetched to believe that Noctis accepted and went through with it. If you want to argue the core is Weaver instead, I doubt he cares enough about Noctis that he would feel so sentimental for his sake. Like he is a demon who has lived for thousands of years, it would make no sense. Anyways, for those of you who aren't caught up to chapter 2410, there will be ginormous spoilers. So, for those of you, thanks for watching and subscribe, please, I'm so desperate. Anyways, for those of you who stayed, let me explain to you exactly what happened in chapter 2410, Myriad of Stars, and why the core of the spell can't be Weaver. I already voiced an argument earlier in the video about why the spell can't be Weaver, but we also know that the spell was a thing in its infantile stages before Weaver's grand murder of all the gods and demons, as confirmed by Sunny seeing a bunch of cores being connected to the spell in chapter 2410 and from what we heard in the third nightmare. Sure, you could argue the nightmare spell back then had no conscience and was much less advanced after the gods and demons died. And some of you might also argue that Weaver had become the core upon having absorbed all gods and demons into the spell. But just hear me out here. The only thing that happened when the demons and gods got absorbed into it was that its influence expanded upon all divine realms. We know that the corpses of the gods are the divine realms, so this assumption would make a ton of sense in my opinion. Weaver couldn't have been the conscience behind it because all the other demons and gods could logically, with that argument, be the conscience behind the spell too. If we assume the gods and demons just completely lost their sentience and conscience, we can also assume the same happened for Weaver. It just wouldn't make sense as a plot point for it to be Weaver. I think Weaver really did die after Slayer stabbed him, as this was literally his fate. I mean, if it was Weaver, he would have shown it by some sarcastic remarks towards Sunny or more obvious changes in its dialogue. The only reasonable scenario is that it is Noctis. This would also explain why Weaver made Sunny bring the obsidian knife to the second nightmare. It would make it impossible for someone like Nefis to destroy the spell. He predicted that someone would try to destroy the spell, which is why he made this move. Like, it's obvious that mostly everything died after the Doom War, and I feel like it would be way too unsatisfactory to write Noctis off as just another undead being like Eurus, especially because of how much personality and emotion Guilty Free has put into this character. And that, my fellow readers, is how I believe Noctis became the spell. The omniscient creation of Weaver. Let me know what your thoughts on this theory are, and thanks for watching.